Welcome, everybody, back to You Have Permission, the show that aims to take both Christianity and the modern world of science and culture very seriously. My name is Dan Koch. I'm a licensed therapist and a post-evangelical liberal Christian who is slowly becoming increasingly like my dad. More on that later. As always, today I'm joined by editor and producer Josh Gilbert. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Dan. Hey, Tony.
Author and theologian Tony Jones. Hi, Tony.
Hello, Dan.
The two of you have become like real life best friends without me in Minnesota, and I'm pretty angry about it, but I'm going to get past that today.
Can I just say Josh is a hell of a dog sitter.
That's true.
Well, now I don't feel bad at all because that doesn't matter.
Dan, I read part of Tony's book that if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see behind him. I read some of it in his bed.
What? Oh, so it's house sitting and dog sitting, to be clear.
House sitting too.
Yeah.
That's some real trust.
Josh
you're letting this guy,
Josh and Emily got a real taste of what it would be like to own a house in the suburbs with a dog and a fenced-in backyard and all the appliances and everything.
Okay, Josh,
which
on a scale from caffeine to heroin, how strong was that drug?
Oh, my God. Okay, what's my real answer for this? A scale of caffeine to heroin. It's probably like a good 3 beers where it's like, man, this feels pretty good. I don't need it, but I could do this. I could do this more often.
That is actually I love that phrasing. When we first moved to the suburbs of Seattle to a city called Shoreline, it was about we were about 7 miles north of like dead center downtown, and we were like half a mile from the official Seattle city limits. But nonetheless, our friends gave us so much shit for moving out to the suburbs. We were the first ones to buy a house that far north, basically of our friend group. It was because it was cheap and that's all we could afford. But seriously, once people started coming to visit us, it was like 3 beers. And unfortunately, because of the market here at that time, this is about 12 years ago, like within a couple years, a bunch of those friends were already getting priced out because it was exploding so quickly up here, and they had to go further north. And it was funny to like almost in real time to see our friends go from giving us a hard time to being a little bit drunk on the idea that they could have their own, $300,000 house with a fenced yard and an apple tree in the back.
To then becoming jealous that they didn't get in early like you did.
Right. Yeah. It's like
they drag their feet. Yeah, because I bought my first house in this suburb when I was 29, Josh's age. That's when I bought my first house. So
I was 28, I think, 28-ish. Yeah, so very similar. This is another one of our regular Generation Gap Culture Hour episodes. The first half of which is on the main feed. Second half is on the Patreon-only feed, and you can get the Patreon going in your own life by heading to patreon.com/DanKoch. Always in the show notes. You get 2 of these exclusive episodes, ad-free versions of all the main feed episodes, and membership in the Patreon-only Facebook group, which is a fantastic online community. As usual, we have a lot to get into today, and we probably won't get to all of it, but here is the table of contents. We got another round of bar, bank, church, or distillery. Josh reminded us via text this morning that this is the final round in the fiscal year before the year of Jubilee kicks in and Tony gets a chance to, compete again. Tony, yes?
And it's dispensary, not distillery.
Sorry. Whoa, what is going on? Have I done this twice because I put it in my notes wrong and I'm copying and pasting them? Guys, I will say I'm getting a little sick today. I'm over-caffeinating and trying to overcompensate in other ways, but if I miss something, that's probably why. We will talk again about ways that we are becoming our dads. We're going to talk about you guys wrapping up the Emerged podcast, this behemoth of audio editing work on Josh's end and storytelling and narrative work by the two of you and Trip Fuller. I had a question that we didn't get to last month about, quote, getting sober, unquote, that I want to talk with you guys about. Tony, you went to 2 post-Christian churches, which is a phrase I've never written down or said before until today, last Sunday, and spoke at them. And you met some You Have Permission listeners. So we're going to talk about what you saw at these post-Christian churches. And I do want to try and get into the solar eclipse because it's got me thinking about like the psychology of early humans and what they must have assumed was going on in big like astronomical events like that. And if we have time for it, I'm feeling a little bit of hope these days for mainline liberal Protestantism. So naturally, I thought I would bring that hope to the person that is most likely to attempt to dash it against the rocks, a la Psalm 137, which is Tony Jones.
I'll shoot that down. That's like me shooting a beach ball with a shotgun.
You can't do fish in a barrel now that you have a book about hunting. You got to get a little bit more. You have to have a more florid example.
We could have Ryan Burge on, Tony, right? You have the data to support the tank of mainline.
Yeah.
I don't mean
Dan's
in
gonna
the
follow
short
the
term.
science.
No. Big air quotes on follow the science. No, I'm not saying that it's like, oh, there's a renaissance right around the corner, but I have some thoughts that I'd like to kick around. All right. So Barbank Church Dispensary, which has been a bloodbath for Tony Jones, who is, he's in, what are you, basically like the Charlotte Hornets, circa 2005, just so far behind. You are like the Jamaican bobsled team at this point, Tony. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
But we are going to give you a chance what are we saying here, Josh? Like he can't mathematically come back, right?
I can run way. How about if I shut you both out? I run the table and
and we give you an honorary second place, and then whoever is in front.
No. This is for all the marbles.
Wow.
No one has
suggesting.
double shutout, so that would be a marvel if you were able to pull it off.
Okay,
but right now it's 11-3. So Tony, we've been doing 2 points for a
you
shutout.
guys would be going 0 for 8 combo.
That's
so that would give me, let's just say, 8 points in some way. And then,
you know what? If you do this, then we are all winners. We tie for first. Everyone gets a participation trophy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Otherwise, either Josh or I is going to fucking win.
Right.
So,
you could tie.
The question
The question is what?
if we should king make Dan, because if we just pick different answers, there's a high chance that one of us will get a point. And then we can.
Oh, are you
take down Tony?
You can't
You're
collude.
a magic.
There's
is this
no
Magic
collusion.
The Gathering collusion here?
There's no
very much
collusion.
King making at its finest.
You can't make an alliance like this is some reality show.
So I guess we have to choose our answers before we say them. Obviously, okay.
Ready?
Yeah, we can do it. We can do it above board. But actually, before we start, I wanted to give a shout out to a member of the Facebook group, Sam Magoon Moore, because he recognized in listening to these episodes that this is basically the New York Times game Connections.
Oh.
If you add more of them. Have you guys played Connections? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
So Connections is a game, Wordle and Connections and the crossword and a game called Spelling Bee. Maybe the crossword's not on it. They're all on the same app that you can get for like the New York Times daily games, basically. So just like there's a crossword every day and there's a Wordle every day, there is a Connections every day. I've very much enjoyed this game for various seasons of my life. I'm kind of in a down season with it right now, but what it is like it's 4 categories of items and you try and group them together and you get a certain number of tries. That's how Connections works. And so he was like, you could do that with bar, bank, church, and dispensary, and you could just do 4 of each. And he made one because there's like a site where you can like make your own Connections game. So I didn't play it. I don't know the answers, but I'm just going to read a few of these. He did one for Salt Lake City. And it's just kind of fun that other people can play around. So he's got like the Well, Beehive, the Green Room, the Plug, Wholesome Co., Desert Edge, Cypress, Movement. Pretty great.
Wait, Dan, if Tony shuts us out, should we do we should play this in real time? Could we?
I don't have a link.
tiebreaker?
I just did a screenshot, so I would have to like track down the link. Maybe we'll figure something out
We'll
if we
see.
need.
Okay.
I kind of like just like going full millennial and doing participation trophies.
Okay. Feels great.
All right, Tony,
what
take
you
it
got
away.
for
Ready,
us?
boys? Ready,
Yeah.
boys? Okay, here we go. Catalyst.
Wait, what city are we in? I need this
Oh,
information.
yeah. Sorry. Anchorage, Alaska.
Oh, all
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Catalyst. New Vision. Crossroads. True North.
Oh my gosh.
Those are great.
You're fucking with us on Crossroads and True North.
Those are really good.
Okay.
Catalyst. New Vision. Crossroads. True North. And you guys, I had so many to choose from. I could do 4. I could do 4 of each from Anchorage, Alaska. Okay, who's going first?
I got mine actually. Let me know, Dan.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. Go for it.
Okay, I'll
Josh.
go first.
Hold on, I got to get a pen.
Okay. I'm going to kind of play into reverse psychology and
Okay.
see.
This is
see
why.
where we
This is
go.
how we win. This is how.
Josh, okay.
That's right. The second layer. Okay, here we go. I'm going to say Catalyst is the church, New Vision is the dispensary, Crossroads is the bank, and True North is the bar.
And
Okay.
we've got 2 shared and 2 different. The ones we share, I also said New Vision, Dispensary,
Wait, slow down. New Vision
Okay.
Dispensary, you said,
Yeah.
okay.
and I'm banking on a kind of a play on Alaskan indigenous vision quests here. So I'm assuming that the potheads of Anchorage, Alaska, I shouldn't call them potheads. We have dispensaries here too. But that the cannabis culture of Alaska is insufficiently aware of the offense of that. And Crossroads Bank, those are the ones that we have the same, but I swapped the others. So I have Catalyst as the bar and True North as the church.
Okay. Josh, 0 for 4.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Dan,
Yeah.
you said Catalyst was the,
Bar.
and you said New Vision was the,
Dispensary, Crossroads Bank, those are the same. And then
Crossroads
True
Bank.
North Church.
you got 1.
Which means I win the season of bar,
True North.
bank, church, or distillery.
True North Church, you got.
Wow, you dove into the psychology for that one and you got it.
You know what? I was just in my feels. I just was going with my intuition, you know, like when you're starting to get sick and like different parts of your brain are connecting.
Catalyst Dispensary,
Yeah.
New Vision Bank, NU Vision.
Oh, now I wonder if you had.
Oh, give me a break.
Okay.
We never said we had to spell them out.
That's true.
Crossroads Bar and True North Church.
Yeah, the
Wow.
only thing I knew I wasn't going to guess was Crossroads Church. That just felt too easy. That was like, but that's what I thought you were going to do, Josh. Like you thought that Tony was trying to mess with us,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I mean, I just picked 4, any of which could have been a church,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, that is the way to do it. Wow.
Wow. Well, so
Anchorage.
do we pick this up again next year, or do we play a different game?
I don't know. I like this game. I think we can call a year of Jubilee and start fresh. But hey, listeners, if you have a better idea for something that we should play instead of Bar Bank Church Dispensary, let us know. Tony, do you have a feeling on that?
I mean, I'd like to give it another try.
You'd like to have another time where you don't go
Another crack
12
at it,
to
though. I
11
think
to
I would
3.
still lose.
Now, Tony does get points for you getting 0, right, Josh? He gets 2 points, is that right?
Yeah.
So you got
Yeah,
5
so
points total.
I'm still in a distant third.
Yeah, you're kind of like you're the friend who comes over to play Mario Kart that hasn't really played nearly as much as the other friends. You're game for it, but it's just not going to go well for you.
I umpired my first baseball game last night, and it was kind of a blowout. First
Wow.
baseball game of the season. It was like 11-5. And then in the bottom of the ninth, the home team scored like 3 runs. and then they had the bases loaded with one out, and I'm just like, no, because the last thing you want is extra innings as an umpire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was already like 10-15. I just wanted out.
Are you
and
paid
then,
per game or per hour?
Oh, per game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so luckily the next two guys grounded out. So I dodged a bullet.
Fucking losers. Okay.
But I just know how
Kidding.
you guys are. All the listeners would probably be like, no, we can't sit around for Tony to mount a comeback. We got to do something different.
Yeah. Well, we're starting fresh. This was the last in the fiscal year, as we said earlier. So we will either restart this next month or we'll come up with a different game. I'm open to either. Let's talk about ways that we are becoming like our dads briefly before we get into more stuff here. So I have actually two. I've got a way that I noticed I was becoming like a dad, and then a way that I noticed I was becoming like my dad. And they happened on the same day. Well, I realized them on the same day anyway. So I was taking Soren's dirty clothes and trying to get them in the hamper. And I made a particularly good bank shot of 3 items bunched together, knocked it off the wall, kind of perfectly into the hamper. And I surprised myself because I did a little dance move to nobody after having hit the bank shot of laundry. And I immediately thought of you guys and this recurring segment. What am I becoming that is like a genuine moment of joy in my day? And then the way I'm becoming like my dad is I talk to our babies in a very specific way. I do a lot of like very exaggerated language, but particularly it is from the narrative perspective of them to me. And I for sure got this from my dad. He does it with pets, babies.
Oh, we got to get a sample.
Okay. So for example, this is embarrassing. Okay, let me try and I'm putting myself in the mindset like an
As
actor
if Tony's
getting
your
ready.
child.
Okay. So like, for instance, be like, oh, I got a big pooper, dada. Like that. Okay. So it's exaggerated and it's from their narrative perspective back to me.
But they're in the room.
Legs. Oh, I say this to them.
That's so confusing
kicking
for
these
them.
legs, dada. Oh, I got so many leg kicks today, dada.
Are you mocking them when you say this?
No, this is my love language to my children. It's fucking weird.
It's super weird because doesn't it confuse the kid? Like,
Well, no, he's 5 months old. Like he doesn't, you know what I mean?
oh, you don't do it to Soren.
I don't do it to Soren. No,
okay,
Stellan.
okay.
Only when they're babies.
Gotcha.
I wasn't picturing Tony as an infant, but now I'm there. Okay.
No, infants. Once they're talking, it's not that way anymore. Yeah.
And then once they start talking to your kids, just take the perspective of other people that they're talking to.
Not that I've noticed. We're 0 for 1 on that so far. Maybe Stellan will do that.
Yeah, that would be wild.
Anyway, that's mine.
That's awesome. I'll go quick. So my dad subscribed me to New York Times maybe 5 years ago, and I never really looked into it. And last week, I actually purchased a monthly subscription for New York Times. And it's less about I just want to keep up with the news and I'll just like pick this outlet. It's like I care about the shade of news from the New York Times, and that's its own interesting thing. It's not so much that like that's my source and I don't want to look at the bias. It's like my dad loves hearing all the news sources and kind of like having a rounded perspective, almost out of intrigue more than like just getting the news directly to you. So
you noticed you're participating in that sort of second layer of I want to get some different perspectives and round them out. And you like specifically chose New York Times, not for the reporting, but for like their kind of slant or their perspective.
Yeah. Just to understand how they tell the news and how that's fascinating. Because I have other, places where I'm getting it as well, but I just want to hear their spin to know like what's happening in that corner of political news.
Self-satisfied New Yorkers, coastal elites.
Yeah. Did you guys?
We subscribe to the New York Times. I'm having fun with it, but yeah.
Colin Jost hosted the White House Correspondents' Dinner,
Yeah.
And he was going around like, Fox News is here, makes a joke about Fox News, CNN is here, makes a joke about CNN. Then he's like, Wordle is here. Sorry, I mean the New York Times is here.
That's good.
That's
Pretty good.
All right, Tony, how are you becoming
Well,
more
when
like your
my dad retired, he's like, I'm never going to shave again. That was his big thing.
Yeah.
Because he was always clean shaven for years as a businessman, and then he retired. I'm done shaving. So he stopped shaving, grew a beard, but kept it pretty trim. But nevertheless, I remember sitting with him and sometimes seeing like the kind of like face dandruff and like stray hairs off his beard on his shirt, especially if he wore like a dark colored shirt or t-shirt. And I was always like, oh my gosh, that is so nasty. Like, take care of yourself, oil your beard, whatever. And now sometimes if I'm wearing a black shirt, I look down and it's like kind of just like old man, like flaky face dandruff and beard dandruff on the shirt. Like, yep.
I don't have a skincare routine, but I do have a beard care routine. Would you like me to share it with you, Tony, in case it may be of use?
I'm never going to let mine grow that long, so
doesn't matter.
I
I don't think it would matter. But I know exactly the beard drift, and the horror at looking down at your beard drift. So I have a 2-step process.
What is it?
The first is I use Head and Shoulders on my beard only. I just do. And I probably do that every 2 or 3 days. I'll wash it with Head and Shoulders and, classic dandruff shampoo. And then I don't use that for my normal hair. And then I use a beard cream. I happen to use one from a company called Scotch and Porter because my friend who's a barber, she liked it. And I like it fine. And that kind of, it moisturizes it, which I think helps, although I'm sure the Head and Shoulders is doing most of the heavy lifting for the dandruff. But it also kind of keeps it from being crazy and just like a little less wiry. And I landed on that a couple years ago, and I would recommend it to anybody struggling in that department.
There should probably be like a beard segment at Theology Beer Camp for just anyone who needs helpful tips.
That's a good idea.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, not a bad idea, Josh.
Lean
into it. I do have a beard joke from my earlier life as a rock and roller in the band Sherwood. So we were all in our 20s, and most of our fans were high schoolers, maybe college kids, but the average Sherwood fan was a high schooler. We were aware of this. We were aware that we were writing music for people roughly 5 to 7 years younger than us, and that it was important that we could, that they could identify to some degree. Like we weren't professors, we were fucking rock and rollers. And we had literal conversations about the maximum number of beards we would allow in the band at one time.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was kind of early on. And then later we tried a lot of like media things, in part because Nate, our singer, is very talented at making videos and very funny at sort of creating that kind of content. And we had this show for a long time called The Sherwood Show. This is before YouTube had kind of taken off, and we actually posted the episodes on our MySpace page. They had a way to do that. And so that was like a sort of like a comedic, short episodes thing. But at one point, 2 or 3 members of the band wanted to start their own thing, and it was a podcast, and they called it Beards in a Band.
Wow.
As a callback to that conversation. And man, we were just so worried about people thinking that we were old. And it's funny now being 40, as I was turning 40, I was telling people like, how's it feel? People ask, how you feel turning 40? And like my go-to line was, I've been 40 since I was 25. Like I've been preparing for this for 15 years. And we were chafing against it back then, but that's what it reminded me of.
Wow.
Did you guys have that in household, Josh?
No beards. I think I was the first one to grow up. I mean, for people watching, I got this light little shading, you could call it. On
Yeah,
the
beard
face.
would be too strong of a word.
Yeah,
for what you got going there.
Keep it trim, and that was it. Household. We had mullets. That was the big thing. We all had mullets
On purpose?
And
like
as
a joke?
as like a weird eccentric thing. Yeah.
Funny
I
that
had
you
like
would-
the same
Funny
length
that
of
you
hair.
would do a weird eccentric thing.
Is it?
The guy who has an idea and 45 minutes later it is tattooed on his body. Not weird.
Right.
That's so funny. That actually doesn't feel characteristic of me, but it is. I do those things. So yeah.
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 Know
mullet.
thyself. Do better,
Yeah.
Josh.
Okay. I'll take it to heart.
Let's talk a little bit about Emerged before we go behind the Patreon paywall. So you guys did 10 episodes of this show. Josh, you and Tony and Trip Fuller produced this thing, and you were kind of the sort of main technical worker on it. Is that right? Like it ended up being a lot more hours, and you talked in this final episode about, maybe the real work, maybe the real emergence is the friends we made along the way. But I want to hear from you guys about this. It was a huge undertaking.
Yeah. Dan, I cut some of the stats from the episode, but we mentioned that there's 35 people that we interviewed. It was over 71 hours of like interview content. So like cutting out the fluff, actually 71 hours. And then,
and in total, it's about the episodes are an hour plus, right?
Yeah. It's about 12 hours altogether.
12 hours of listening.
So, and a lot of that isn't, we also recorded an hour every week for intros and so it's actually much more than that, but I want to share this, and then I want Tony to talk about it. But we were finishing the episode on Monday, and I had this like, Dan, you might understand from like the writing records days, where it was pretty much ready. We had it all. It was all edited actually and produced. We were doing like the first draft on the last episode, and I was like flying into Denver, and I just had this like sinking feeling that like it wasn't right. Like the way that I built the ending just wasn't like honoring it. And so I stayed up till like 2 a.m. redoing it. And then Tony and I talked in the morning, like as it was coming out, basically last minute changes. And then at the end, I was like, well, it's been awesome. Hope I get to see you later. And Tony says, Josh, we're not breaking up. Like we can still see each other. You don't have to get so melancholy.
Josh did give like his final goodbye. Like, Tony, it's been great.
Maybe as Tony and Courtney are going out of town and he's handing you the keys, you guys could exchange a knowing glance and some pleasantries, and you could kind of keep in touch that way.
Tony.
I mean, it was incredible. It was an incredible project. It was a project of storytelling. Josh and I. Well, the origin story is that Trip approached me and was like, hey, let's do a class. Like he does these classes, let's do an emerging church class, and we'll do it between Advent and Lent. We'll do like a 4-week class in January, and we'll have some of your friends on, and we'll make a little bit of money, and et cetera. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And it was perfect timing because I had finished my book, but it wasn't out yet. So I was in that like no man's land of there's nothing I can do. Now the book is like just being printed and put in boxes.
So you want a creative project to fill that in.
And so I had like a few months of, I was a bit fallow, but almost immediately I thought, let's take another tack. Instead of doing a class, let's do a produced podcast. And obviously having gotten to know Josh through this, I asked Josh if he had any interest in it, and it was kind of like, I want to do it. Of course, it was inspired in part by the rise and fall of Mars Hill.
Right.
But that podcast is in a whole genre of storytelling, highly produced podcasts that have multiple interviews and music and a narrator, and stuff like that. So I thought, well, let's give that a try. And I mean, this is the first time I've actually said this out loud, but the reason I did it, like the reason I pushed for that is because Emergent was so important to me those 10 years that I didn't want it to just be a class for people who paid for a class. I was like, if I'm going to really spend time in the next few months reflecting on Emergent and what it meant to me and inviting some of my friends to be part of it, I want it to like be as beautiful as those 10 years were in my life. I want it to be like an actual reflection of those 10 years, not like, nothing against Trip and Diana doing their regular live YouTubes or whatever, but I wanted it to be more than that. It felt more than that. It's like, I don't know. It's like the difference between writing a 2.5-minute pop song and saying our next album is going to be a rock opera and
Right.
it's going to be a double album. You know,
What could
Is that-
possibly go wrong, Tony?
But I know exactly. So it's a big risk, right? And it's a ton of work,
is
and
more
maybe
risky.
not.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe not everybody in the band is totally on board with it. You know,
Yeah.
that idea. So I don't know if that's a good analogy, but that just comes to me as might be a band analogy. So in any case, we did it. It was super fun. If it, word to the wise out there, if you ever want to do a big project like this, there's a reason people do the Kickstarter before they start the project and like raise the money, and then they know the scope because they know their budget. And we just started working on it and then started asking people for money, and people were very generous. It was amazing. But it was, it was way more work than it was remuneration. But I'm so proud of it. I'm so glad we got to work with Josh. It turned out just incredible. And Josh, I think it was the first project you've done like that. So I think it put a lot of tools in your toolbox, hopefully.
Yeah, I want to hear about that, Josh. Like from without getting like uber technical, of course, Tony and I could appreciate it, but for the listeners' sake, talk a little bit about, the actual work it takes to put together something that sounds like an NPR style, fully produced, narrated, scored show.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I could talk a lot about this, but I'll say kind of two things. One is that I was a producer for this show, and that's actually the first time I feel like I've really worn that hat. Dan, we say producer for you have permission, but you're handling the subject and you're absolutely taking over the content, and I'm adjusting it, I'm editing it. I make some production calls, but for the most part,
Yeah, but you're sort of assistant producer more technically on you have permission. Yeah.
And this was like, hey Josh, I have 10 episode ideas. Tony says this, but how do we want to tell this story? Do we want to incorporate Mark Driscoll? How do we want to put him to death on the show? Do we want to incorporate more women? Do we want to do a whole episode? All of these big picture choices. And so having sort of the keys to make those fun, artistic, creative choices really, I felt like, it was an open world and I could just pick whatever I wanted. And the second part is that I really leaned into my musical background. The sessions in Logic, the audio production suite that I use, sometimes we had up to 120. The last episode had 120 tracks, anywhere from 50 to 100, where it's just I'm totally reversing. I'm totally adding an artistic flavor to it all. This last episode, Tony doesn't even know this, but I played this pad in the background of all the sentimental pieces, and it's actually a version of the theme song, but it's slowed down, doubled, and reversed. And so that's the kind of thing where you don't do that for a regular podcast, but as an artist, I'm I want the theme to sort of reverse into the fine, and it ends with basically the final song is the credits and the full, it's actually the ending message of the whole show. So that's getting in the weeds, but basically just feeling like I have the freedom to take those artistic liberties was so fun. It was so fun.
What I'm hearing you say is it was worth it. So you said it's worth it. So let me work it. Let me slow it down, double and reverse it. Much like Missy Elliott.
I don't really know that reference. There's the generation gap.
Do you get that one, Tony?
No.
Come on. You suburban whites.
You know what I felt like? I know some people. I know that when a new writer gets to Saturday Night Live, they always get paired up with somebody. Conan O'Brien and Bob Odenkirk were writing partners at SNL. And a lot of the great comedy writers, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David were arguably the best sitcom writers of all time. And I can see now why, when you're telling a story, having a writing partner is so valuable. I've been writing novels, so I've been working a lot on storytelling. And in my book, which is kind of a memoir, I really try to do storytelling. But when we did this, Josh would kind of do a rough cut and he would send it to me. And Tripp doesn't live here, so he didn't have this opportunity. Then Josh and I would get together at one of our houses and spend 4 to 6 hours going through it and cutting. No, this goes over here. This goes here. Cut. Not the stuff of like, oh, he coughed. Cut that out, Josh. Like that was stuff he could do on his own. But like, I don't think we need that part of that interview.
No,
cut
shaping
out that
it.
sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like, oh, let's put a Tony narration here. We'll put a Tripp narration here. Da. And then Josh would take it from there and do the next layer of storytelling, which is layering in all this music and coming back and saying like, Tony, I think we actually need your narration here instead of there. Or could you revoice this one narration? Or he would give me direction even when I was doing voiceovers. Like, hey, say it again, but pop the last word a little more. That's, I think, what we need leading into the next audio clip.
Hell yeah.
So it was like, it was amazing.
That's
because we were both so committed to we just really wanted to tell a compelling story.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah. It was fun.
And the last thing is, I'll just say, even though, Tony, you have so much experience in this, like I found out that you teach a writing class at Open Book, or like a memoir class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're well educated, you're well read, you've written plenty of books, so that's obviously your expertise is on the table. But something about our dynamic, which I'll just be honest and say, like, it was cool because I didn't feel like that was so intimidating that I couldn't participate and offer my own like kind of untested storytelling skills. So it was just super fun. I think it was rewarding for both of us. And it's definitely the most like creative, fun thing I've worked on as far as podcasting. No offense, Dan, we've been working together for years.
Fuck you.
I'd encourage anybody to listen to episode 10, even if you don't have the bandwidth to listen to the whole thing, and listen to episode 10 all the way to the end to hear how Josh put that. I know it's long. It's like an hour 25, but I'd listen to it again today for the second time and cried. Courtney texted me. She's like, damn it, I'm in the grocery store weeping, And I've gotten calls from a lot of emerging church leaders and techs who are like, I'm sitting here crying listening to the final episode. So
really?
It was great storytelling.
Awesome.
You heard it here first. Okay, we're gonna cut to the patron feed where I am. Thank you guys, by the way. I feel like we should leave a little room next month to talk about some of the feedback you guys have gotten now that the show is over. And I just like, I'm so interested in the behind the scenes sort of creative decision making and all of that stuff. So just remind me to kind of come back to it a bit next month. But we're going to move on here, and I'm going to coin a new term for a person who is quote unquote sober, but still smokes weed, which is kind of what my question is about. So that'll be for patrons on the other side. And if you want to join that, again, it's patreon.com/DanCoke. That link is in the show notes. Main feed listeners, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you Monday for another main feed episode.